Hello there and welcome to the Fastmarkets Middle East Iron and Steel event in Dubai. I'm Georgia Tolley and this is our live lounge, and I'm delighted to welcome Harsh Choudhry. He is the CEO and co-founder of sentra.world. Now, Harsh has over 18 years of experience in sustainability across 30 different countries. He's become a real global leader in areas such as GHG accounting, energy efficiency, and also sustainable agriculture. His impressive career spans over a decade at McKinsey, where he rose to the position of associate partner. In 2023, Harsh took the leap to co-found sentra.world, which blends artificial intelligence with sustainability, with an aim to empower businesses in their decarbonisation efforts. And today, we're going to explore his remarkable journey, insights into sustainability, and vision for the future of the industry. Harsh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Georgia. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, I've got so much I want to talk to you about because you really are at the sharp end of everything that is trending at the moment. And I'm really interested as well about that leap that you made between McKinsey and starting your own company. Let's start with that, in fact. You know, what actually inspired you to co-found sentra.world? You know, and what excites you most about your role today?
Great question, Georgia. I think, the shift or the transition from a structured career at McKinsey to jumping into the abyss with a startup has been very, very exciting, very, very fun, but also very challenging. I think the primary reason for starting up was that I've always been tied to the problem, right? The problem of solving for sustainability. Now, while at McKinsey, I think it gave me great opportunities to do that, but I felt that being on my own and working solutions out on my own, outside of a consulting sphere, being able to not just consult but do, would present a better opportunity for me to create real impact. That was reason number one. Reason number two was, I think, the hustle that I see around in startups. I think that hustle really drew me in. And, I love being occupied for 16 to 18 hours a day with things, and a startup is just the right place to channel that energy.
It is all consuming. It sounds like you're happy to be busy a lot. And I'm really interested by what you said there about wanting to do. Do you have a personal drive to help to save the world, to put it in its most explicit term, to help reduce people's carbon footprints, companies' carbon footprints?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about the industrial manufacturing sector, that makes up 60% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and global greenhouse gas emissions are probably one of the biggest reasons that we see for climate change, right? And I have two small kids at home, and when I think about what are we leaving behind for them, it doesn't look very nice. I mean, I think everybody needs to do their part to leave behind a more positive legacy, which is going to hopefully sustain the world for generations to come. I think that has been my personal drive, and I think the other part of me is very rooted in business, right? And there, I felt that sustainability and business were not so connected, and they ought to be connected. Otherwise, I mean, they're part of the same coin. They're two sides of the same coin. Unless you're being able to make your company sustainable and profitable at the same time, sustainability itself is not going to be sustainable.
Yes.
So we have to look at how you're adding profitability and sustainability into the same sentence, and both of them are happening together. And that's what at sentra.world, that is our primary focus. Because if I go and talk to a steel player and you tell them that I'm going to plant 10 trees for you, they'll be like, okay, fine, good for you. But if you tell them that I'm going to do this, you're going to reduce your emissions, you're going to grow your top line or reduce your bottom line, then you're talking.
And oddly enough, that is one of the key messaging coming out of the UAE government. They're very keen to emphasize the fact that sustainability doesn't mean loss of profit. In fact, it can mean
absolutely
the very opposite. You've worked now for more than 15 years in this sector in many different countries. I'd love to hear about one of the most transformative projects that you've been involved in, just in many ways because it is inspiring.
Right. I think there have been a few, and I can talk about my time at McKinsey and then at the startup as well, right, at sentra.world. I think my time at McKinsey, this was literally the first piece of work that I started doing I was an analyst that time, and I was like, bottom rung. And we were building these things called the greenhouse gas abatement cost curves. It's a mouthful, but essentially we were accounting for every ton of CO2 which is released into the atmosphere from every part of the world. So if there are 40 gigatons of CO2 which are released into the atmosphere, which countries is it coming from? Which sectors is it coming from? How many cars are there in Poland which are leading to what emissions? So that we built up this huge database, right? And basis that we started to suggest to governments, to organizations on what they could do to reduce their CO2 emissions. And this was way back in 2007, 8 and things. That's the time, 2008, the financial crisis hit, oil prices went down. And the conversation was always very much happening in Europe, and that too in Northern Europe, in Stockholm, in Denmark. These conversations were happening there. I was based in India that time, and I think what really struck me was that, majority of the population is in Asia right now. What are we going to do about it? And then I went around asking people, so who's going to pay for climate change and sustainability work in Asia? The answer was very clear: nobody. Nobody's going to pay that, and especially around the last financial crisis. But there was one part of it which was energy efficiency, which helps you reduce your emissions, but at the same time it hits your bottom line. So then we started to take that up as part of McKinsey, set up a few capabilities, tools, etc., and a business around it, where we would then go, literally I'd be living out of a suitcase for the next 4 to 5 years, go from one factory to the next. One week you're in Japan, the other week you're in Australia, spend a week at each manufacturing site, come up ways in which they can reduce their energy efficient, they can improve their energy efficiency and bring that all back out. So it takes a whole lot of different activities to really make all of this work, and then later on got into the other side of things of sustainable agriculture and things, right? So coming back to your question, the part around developing that massive database was really, it was eye-opening, especially coming out of university where things are theoretical. For the first time you're dealing with so much of information, really crisp insights, and it gave me the opportunity to go and talk to heads of government, and for example in UAE, in Poland, in Malaysia, in the US, in India, with this information, and I was dealing with all of this data. So that was truly eye-opening. Then a lot of work that I did working with individual companies, individual manufacturing companies, semiconductors, steel companies, etc., advising them on how they can reduce their emissions. Those were nice. I did a short stint in sustainable agriculture, so as to work with a lot of plantation companies in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, in Indonesia. And literally I would spend weeks in these places where there would be no cell phone connections, etc. So travel by boat, travel by one or two helicopters here or there, reach sites where you had these large parcels of land, 2 million acres, 5 million acres, and you're figuring out ways in which how you can actually reduce flooding happening in them, right? So visiting all of these places, doing early versions of AI and mathematical modeling on how to do that. So that was very interesting. And at sentra.world, I think, I won't say it's a project, but it's just a continuous stream of just building your own business on as you said, a hot and trending topic like sustainability. But I think the challenging part is also how do you get your customers to truly understand what this is, what it means for you. So I think all of them have had different challenges, but all of them have been extremely rewarding.
Honestly, sounds completely fascinating. That idea that you were basically living out of a suitcase for 4 to 5 years, traveling from factory to factory. How did that time sort of shape your approach to strategy, innovation, leadership? Because as a young man, you were going into those factories and essentially telling probably older men or women, how to manage their business effectively. Correct. I mean, it was a good message you were getting across, but nevertheless, you were telling them what to do.
Exactly.
Or what they could do.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I think the first few times that's what used to keep me up at night, that I was probably all of like mid-20s and I have to go and tell people who have very long, successful careers behind them and tell them that whatever you're doing was not 100% correct.
Or wrong.
So,
but you never said that.
I know, obviously I never said that. But I think there are 2 or 3 things to it, right? Number one is just around humility, right? You have to approach any discussion with humility. You can't come across as being brash. How much information or knowledge or value add you may have, you have to approach it with humility. The other thing was, it's all about people, right? You need to convince people that this is good for you, understanding what their motivations are. I mean, I've met factory managers who are at the end of their career, right? They have another year to go. And they're like, hey, I mean, I don't want to rock the boat now. I just want to do what I'm doing, retire, have my send-off party, go live with my grandkids or whatever I want to do. But you're convincing this person that, hey, you need to change a few things before you make all of this. So truly understanding what their psyche is, maybe then you're talking to them about legacy. What is the legacy that you're leaving behind? It's your last year. What will your company remember you for implementing this program or for some other things, right? So I think just finding out behind each person what is the motivation, because technical improvement ideas like making an adjustment to one machine here there, that a lot of people will be able to do and guide. But truly working on the change management part of that and seeing what drives them, I think that is something which I found was a key to doing this. And I think the third part was you have to be knowledgeable. You can't just wing it. There's no shortcut for that. When you approach when I used to do these site visits, I used to do like a week or 2 weeks of homework to truly understand what this plant was, where is it that they were sourcing the energy from, whatever public news was there, so that you also come across as not just showing up on day one and say, okay, let's go, but really coming up with the right information and the right tools, and be open to the fact that you'll be corrected. That's how you're going to learn.
Really interesting to hear about your career path there. I'm now going to bring you to the future, to the now.
Sure.
Because I know that sentra.world really focuses on using technology to drive ESG in the industrial space.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit more about how that platform works?
Absolutely. So, when we started this off, I started this together with a very good friend of mine. Both of us were at McKinsey. His name is Vikas. Both of us started our careers together in the same office. I moved to Singapore, he moved to Dubai, and then we reconnected. And obviously, we've known each other for a really long time. But when we started this off, and this was about 2 years back, we said we wanted to do something in sustainability. We wanted to work with industrial companies, and we wanted to use technology. Those were the three pillars that we set, and we said, okay, let's think of a business around this. We know these are the three topics that we know. We can't go out and sell T-shirts, or we can't do something else, or have a financial business, etc. Let's focus on topics that we know. So then we went and talked to many of our ex-clients who are now professional friends. We went and told them that, hey, we can do. You set a net zero goal or whatever. How can we help you out with it? Can we do some consulting work for you? Can we implement projects for you? What do you want? Because we are focused in the outcome. We want to make sure that you're meeting your net zero goal. They said that the first thing that we need to do is we need to know what our emissions are. And we said that seems like a trivial problem. I mean, you guys publish annual reports and things. And with a cheeky smile, a lot of them says, yeah, we know what those numbers are made of, and they are a one-time activity. They come out 6 months after the entire activity is over, so you can't do much about it. But we need to get to a point, right, where we are using data to tell us where our emissions are, to tell us where we can actually reduce, where are the anomalies there, the analytics around it. So that was one part. Then they also said that, we said, okay, there are software programs around that, why don't you use that? They said the problem is that none of them are sector specific. So which means that if I'm going to a steel player, I cannot go to that person and say, this is a software and it's going to be applicable to steel, cement, aluminum, buildings and agriculture and everything else. It needs to identify that I am a gas DRI player who has ABC rolling mills who's supplying into somewhere else. These are my raw materials. If you're not speaking that language, you cannot expect somebody to come and train your software and adapt to it and things. So this is called, in software as a service, this is a vertical SaaS. So it goes on a vertical, which is we're focused on the steel industry right now. So that was the second ask for them, that make it sector specific. The third one was, they said, you have to make it simple. There are tons of people who come and tell us that so many regulations, so many taxes, so many systems, so much data, and they confuse the hell out of us, right? You need to come in and, sustainability is a complicated topic. Manufacturing is complicated. You can't put both of them together and make another complicated square. You have to make it simple. So with these three principles, we set it out and we said, okay, let's be sector specific. Let us focus on use of technology. And let us make this very, very simple for people. Steel makers should continue to make steel. They should not be focused on writing sustainability reports. That's our job. So that's where we infuse technology. So what we essentially do is we collect data from companies. We do all the analytics around it. We clean up the data. We do the analytics around it. They need to submit a lot of reports now as part of this ESG reports, etc. And we did some analysis. We figured that there are probably 10, 12 different sustainability reports which need to get published. But there are only 275 unique metrics which cover all of these reports. So we said, hey, why don't we start there? So we automated the entire 275 metrics, and using some Gen AI tools, now you want to publish this report here. Here's the button. Click on it, and Gen AI is going to get 95% of the report, and then you can do your wordsmithing at the end to make it all right? So we started using that. Then there was an interesting use case which came up. They said that, as a steel producer, my customers don't trust the data that I'm sending, because I have suppliers behind me, and the suppliers are coming from, I don't know, they're coming from India, they're coming from Thailand or wherever, and I don't know them. I just know I have a business relation, so I don't trust the data. So we said, why don't we put blockchain in there? So now we have a blockchain solution where right from the iron ore mine to the transportation vessels, to the power plant, to your DRI plant, and through the entire cycle right till the time that the steel gets scrapped, all the emission numbers can go on the blockchain. If you have the access rights, you can go and mine that data, you can get it out, and that data can never be erased, can never be changed. So if you're, let's say, a steel user, like a construction company in, I don't know, Frankfurt, right, and you want to know, hey, where is the steel coming from? You use it and you will know which mine. Maybe it came from a mine in Brazil, then it went to Qatar for pelletizing, then it came to UAE for steel making, then it went to a distributor in, let's say, in Hanover, and then from there it went to Frankfurt. You're able to see that entire part. So this visibility, traceability, etc., all of that is solved for through blockchain.
I mean, that is key for companies in Europe because they're required to issue those types of reports, and it's becoming
Exactly.
more prevalent here. I have to say, there was one stage in that answer where I was slightly open-mouthed, sort of my jaw came down. This idea that, people would have spent years creating these reports.
Correct.
And now you just got AI doing it at a punch of a button.
Exactly.
I mean, that is absolutely extraordinary. You must be hugely popular in the industry.
No, it's good, right? See, for example, this regulation of CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment
Yes.
Mechanism, right? It has thrown people all over. I mean, people are really confused right now on what to do. Also because 2026 onwards, there are dollars or euros attached to it.
Yeah.
Whenever you attach a euro to something, a dollar value to something,
Focuses the mind, doesn't it?
Exactly. now the question from people is that, hey, what am I going to do about it? Because when we did some calculations, we realized that companies would be paying, 10, 20, even up to $100 per ton of steel to be able to cover these carbon taxes. And now there are similar CBAMs coming up in UK. We'll see what Donald Trump decides to do, but he's also going to be, again, my personal view, that he will want to protect local industry.
Yeah.
Climate is a great way to protect local industry by imposing taxes on foreign, and you can't break like a free trade agreement, so you impose a carbon tax on it, right? So they're coming up with something. India has a CCTS. UAE is coming up with their carbon registry in December this year. Thailand, Malaysia, Australia, Korea, all of them are coming up with some sort of carbon taxes over the next 2 years. So in the next 2 years, if we meet again in, let's say, Fastmarkets 2026, we will be seeing a completely different regulatory landscape for carbon taxes in all major steel producing countries.
Very, very interesting to hear that. And I'm going to just tease out the sort of AI
Sure.
element of our conversation because it is becoming such a key enabler for sustainability. How do you see the evolution of the technology? And I know we're talking about a broad brushstroke scenario here. You've described one way in which it can be used. Can you see other ways in which it will be implemented?
Absolutely. I think that there are tons of ways. I talked about the report writing, which is fairly, I wouldn't say basic, but it's a well accepted use case. Now there are ways. I talked about the trust part, right? There is a trust deficit right now
Yes.
on CO2 emissions data. Now, one of the simple use cases, we are working with an auto manufacturer for a large European auto manufacturer who has about 2,500 suppliers in India. And they have to get all the data in and do all of that and report it out. But they were not able to get 100% trust on the suppliers. So we came up with something which is very simple. We said for the majority of the emissions, if they're coming from electricity, people should submit their electricity bills. Now we have a simple AI module, a natural language processing module, which through computer vision, it will read the electricity bill from different parts of the world. It will compute how many kilowatt hours or units of electricity you've consumed. It matches that to the data that they have submitted to be able to come up with an answer. The reason why I mentioned, and this is a very basic use case, but the reason why I'm mentioning these basic use cases because we've explored a whole bunch of AI use cases. But we've realized that you cannot do super advanced stuff on people right at the start. You have to start them. You have to do an AI for beginners for your customers. Get them used to the fact that there is an AI tool which can do a few things for you. Ease them in. You can't just throw up like super complex AI models on them, because they'll also get nervous. I mean, you have to respect the fact that it is a human over there who has to use the AI. If there is a human over there, ease them into it. There are more advanced use cases, like if you think about steel plant, you are optimizing for cost, for yield, for throughput, for emissions and everything over there. Ultimately, it's a recipe, right? It's like to cook the perfect the creme brulee, right? You need a few ingredients and the right temperature set points and everything to work out. Any manufacturing process is very similar. So earlier it was only about, the conversation was about productivity and cost and quality. Now we've inserted a different angle, which is emissions.
Yeah.
So there's a different objective function. There are now 4 or 5 objective functions. So what is the right recipe to make this work? And you cannot define this recipe in a lab or on a computer, or as a design. You have to actually look at your previous data and see when in your history were you actually able to achieve that optimal, that sweet spot. And then you go out and you build and train a model which is going to say that to achieve this sweet spot, these are the 10 things which you need to do. And this has already been done in your history by fluke, or you actually got that point. And now these modules are able to say that, okay, at any different operating point, what do you need to change to achieve that sweet spot where cost, productivity, quality, emissions are all in control.
Okay, so you've mentioned that one of the challenges there, which is to kind of gently spoon feed your customers the recipe, or what you've created from your recipe. What are the other sort of major challenges that you see what are the other major challenges that you're going to have to get over in order to drag this slightly old-fashioned industry into a low-carbon future?
Yeah, I think, good question. I think there are 2-3 parts to it. One is just getting the right data. Steel companies have a lot of data. It is almost alarming, and what I've seen is that most companies, they don't use more than 2 to 3% of the data that they collect.
That's the same in nearly every industry, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. So they don't use it. Now, getting them used to the fact that all of this data is lying in your ERP system, like in SAP or something. First of all, bringing that over. It's lying in different shapes, forms, units are, so getting them all into a usable format, that is really step one. And also doing data validation on them, because this data is coming off sensors. The sensor is lying on top of a blast furnace somewhere which nobody can really test, right? So how do you make sure that it's calibrated? So you ensure that you're putting in some validation to ensure that the data is correct. So one is getting all of this data into a place where it can be analyzed, it can be developed and all of that. That's one challenge. We talked about the change management part of it. The other part is, what are those insightful analytics? We've seen, so many of these dashboards come up which have so much of information that, if you're bringing this up to your COO or your CEO who have 20,000 things on their mind, you cannot go to them with, okay, these are the tables and blah, 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 and wait for them to generate insights. We have to reach a point where you're very, very sure about what are the top 3 messages which people need to get out of the data, and ensure that comes out. The numbers are only supporting that message, right? The modules have to come up with an action. It cannot just be showing data. It has to suggest to you that, hey, over the last 1 week, we have seen that your electricity consumption in one particular area has increased. These are the 3 reasons why it has increased, and this is what you need to do to adjust it, right? So converting, there's information, there is data, then goes to insight, and that goes to action. So you cannot, analytics or AI should not just be information and data. It is the analytics, it is insight generation, and it has to lead you to action and close the entire loop. Otherwise, all this data is useless.
We talked about the global regulatory framework that is advancing and progressing around the world. I'd like to bring it back to the UAE in particular, and I suppose the wider Middle East, but the UAE in particular. Is there a feel that governments understand what the market needs? Is there a sense that governments are working alongside the industry to change the regulatory framework, or is it being imposed?
Yeah. No, I think the UAE government, hats off to them. I mean, the way that they led COP28 last year.
Yeah.
It was like a work of art. If you're sitting on the sidelines as I was and watching them facilitate the whole thing and carry on the discussions. I mean, we see the UAE pavilion at COP29 as well. I mean, you can see that their effect is not just for that year; it is everlasting. It is going to last for decades, right? Whatever they were able to achieve. So I think I don't have a shadow of a doubt that they actually understand what the problem is.
Yes.
They have the resources to deploy it. They are very, very closely tied to industry. They understand that part. The carbon registry, which is the carbon credit trading system, which is going to get launched later this year. It has been in discussion for a few years now, and it should. It cannot be that you think of something and next day you're implementing it. It has been thought of, and they're also taking steps at it. They're not rolling out like emissions are divided into scope 1, 2 and 3. Scope 3 is all your supply chain emissions. They've said, okay, let's go slow, let's ease you into it. Scope 1 and 2, let's start with that, then we will get into scope 3. So they understand that part. They have said that there will be a carbon trading platform. They're inviting private entities to come and set that up to do all of this. We see through various agencies, we see the amount of funding which is now available for startups in the UAE. It is absolutely phenomenal. The kind of support that you're getting. I mean, at this point in time, if you come and say, I'm coming, and from anywhere in the world, you can come and say that, okay, I'm going to be based in the UAE, I'm doing a startup over here, and they will roll out the red carpet for you in terms of what startups need. I mean, you need access to some free Amazon credits, or you need a place to stay, right, for your employees or whatever else, right? So they will support with all the right structures, etc., to make that happen, right? So I think they are very, very closely tied. I think they will just have to keep the momentum up now that we are entering this carbon tax regime system for the next 4 to 5 years. We'll see a lot of this happening. So I think just keeping themselves very rooted into this and big focus on international trade, because the UAE is going to be, for steel manufacturing decarbonization, the Middle East is the place to be right now, because there is access to gas DRI, which other people don't have. There is scrap available, gas DRI available. The Middle East at this point, it has the lowest CO2 emissions per ton of steel, and they are geographically also, they are best positioned. The construction sector is booming. So it is all happening over here. It's all culminating over here, and the UAE leads the climate agenda for the broader MENA region, if I can call it that, right? So there's a lot of responsibility also, but I'm sure they'll do very well in this leadership role on the topic of decarbonization.
I have got one final question for you, and it's one we've been asking all of our guests on the Live Lounge,
Right.
because it focuses around the conference's theme, which is Transform Tomorrow Together. What does that theme mean to you, and how do you see it impacting on the industry's future from your perspective?
Well, it's a great theme. I love it because the 3 words, transform, it means that you are creating not just an incremental change, but really a big change, right? A transformation is not just about moving the needle from 50 miles per hour to 60. It is how do you go from either 50 to 0 or 50 to 100, right? So that word around transform is very, very strong and very powerful, and we have to go deeper into that, because with climate change and sustainability, it cannot be incremental changes. The way we are right now, we are at, catastrophic effects happen at 1.5 degrees temperature increase over prehistoric era. We are at about 1.2, 1.3. So we have to do a big change. So the transform is important. Tomorrow is also very important because there are many people who are kicking the can down the road, right? We will do net zero in 2050, we will do net zero in 2060 and 2070. All those are great. We'll get to net zero, but there is stuff before net zero. There is start reducing your emissions by 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%. We saw during COVID times, I mean, there were many negatives which happened during COVID times, but the positives were that nature was claiming it back, right? They were
Fast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I just talk about tiger population, during that time, it went up like 2x because there were tigers were allowed to do what they had to do, right? So that part which is around getting back to talking about tomorrow, not just 10, 20 years later. And I'm taking a slightly different different interpretation of the word tomorrow. But for me, tomorrow means immediate. It has to happen
I like
now.
that. I like the immediacy of tomorrow.
Correct.
It's almost as close as today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it
Yeah.
has to happen. You plan today, you do tomorrow. So that urgency has to be there.
Yeah.
And the together part is also great because, see, it's an ecosystem at the end of the day. I mean, steel players are leading this ecosystem. If I just talk about the decarbonization of steel players are obviously at the center, but they cannot do it alone. I mean, they are manufacturers of steel. They should not be even be expected that you're going to have AI solutions. You're going to be providing every service possible. You're going to do report writing. You're going to come up with technologies to inject more biomass into your boilers, etc. I mean, they're not there to do that. So that ecosystem word is very important because, and I think a lot of companies started to respect that. They've said that I cannot do everything on my own. I'm going to form a body and I'm going to invite startups. That's why a lot of now companies have these startup programs. You come be a part of it, deploy your solutions, we'll give you some, it's almost like a PhD stipend, right? You get that, you come, you use our facilities, etc. So a lot of this is actually happening. So it's a perfect theme, right? It's a perfect theme around big changes, start immediately and involve those around you. That's my interpretation.
Thank you so much, Harsh. Really, really appreciated your insights. They're absolutely fascinating stuff.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And if you want to hear more interviews like that, please do be sure to subscribe to our podcast. Of course, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple and Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on our upcoming events and more industry content, please check out our website, fastmarkets.com.